Your pages have numbers, by the way, which is unusual for me, as you know. And so let's start at page 4. It looks like that. And I presume that, that probably all of you, well, let me do it the other way. Is there anybody in here who has not read Think and Grow Rich? Elliot, really? You're kidding me. Did you raise your hand too?
I haven't read it all.
Well, it ain't that thick. I mean, you know. I mean, I know you're skinny, but you got to go to the bathroom once a day, don't you? You know, a couple pages every day. I mean, in a month or so, you're done, you know, unless you're stopped up. I mean, gee whiz. Jim Rohn used to talk about recommending the book to people when it was still only in hardcover and have people tell him, well, you know, I'm going to wait till it comes out in paperback. May I make a recommendation? Yeah. How many have read Hill's other stuff? The Laws of Success that it came from, Grow Rich with Peace of Mind? Not so many. Best book of the bunch. You should get your hands on that one. It's the one he wrote latest in life, and it's probably Grow Rich with Peace of Mind. It's probably the best of the bunch. How about Succeed and Grow Rich Through Persuasion? Oh, hardly any. Isn't that interesting?
Was that by Hill?
Napoleon Hill. It was written for a company called Holiday Magic, which was what today we would call multi-level, what the regulatory folks call pyramid scheme. It was written for a guy by the name of William Penpatrick at Holiday Magic as a combination sales tool for the distributors and a credibility device for Penpatrick and Holiday Magic, because he's all through the book. You don't know, looking at it, that it was written for Holiday Magic. That, in fact, was the point. As an aside, by the way, you can trace a lot of the self-improvement industry back to that. Zig was in Holiday Magic. Werner Erhard was in Holiday Magic before he was called Werner Erhard. Jim Rohn, who of course essentially birthed Tony. And so you can trace the lineage of a lot of this back to Penpatrick. Anyway, so you're all familiar with Hill's work. Oh, and Phil brought me, which I'll show you later because there's something in it I want to quote. Phil Alexander, who's all the way in the back next to the camera. Phil is a great finder of ancient artifacts. And he's got 2 copies of the Napoleon Hill magazine from 1921, which sold for 25 cents a copy, by the way, and was one of the many Hill business ventures that lasted a relatively short period of time, so there's not a lot of editions, but it's a real interesting thing to see. What a lot of people are not real cognizant of, and I want to be careful about this because I don't want to in any way invalidate anything in the books. But like so many of us, there's a vast difference between identifying what works, putting what works down in a book, and then actually doing it. And Hill spent the latter years of his life fundamentally broke. And a lot of people don't know that. But at one point in time, I remember seeing a classified ad in Success magazine where his original typewriter was for sale for $50 or best bid above 50. Napoleon Hill was basically rescued late in life by Clem Stone and put to work as a sales trainer. for Combined Insurance Companies of America. And that was like pretty much the last things he did in his career before he retired. And Stone basically kind of made him economically whole. But when Stone got him, he was basically broke. By the way, there's another product you might want. Nightingale Conant has, and they don't advertise it, but they have a set of videos of Napoleon Hill, the title of which completely escapes me. But what they really are, they're black and white, and what they really are films of the sales training classes at Clem Stone's insurance company. And I think they're the only video available with Hill on them. Phil, you can probably find a set on eBay, God help us all, for $18.72 or something, but I think they're $300 if you buy them from Nightingale. And undoubtedly one of the reasons Nightingale doesn't advertise them much is their underwear tightens up at the thought of asking anybody for $300. But they do have them, and they will grudgingly let you buy them if you pursue them. And I recommend them. They're really fascinating. Anyway, Hill, who, more, according to Inc. magazine, more self-made millionaires put Think and Grow Rich on their list of books that have influenced them than any other book other than the Bible. And just about everybody in my circle, I mean, you couldn't walk into one of my clients' offices and not find the whole library. And so here's the guy who wrote, if you will, the Bible about prosperity, who winds up broke. And isn't that disturbing? And why is that? And Clem Stone, who was inspired by Napoleon Hill's work, winds up very, 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 very rich. Stone finally, he passed away not too long ago at the ripe old age of 212 or something. And, basically, he was too mean to die. I'm sure that was one of those funerals where there were people there out of respect, and there were people there who wanted to make sure. I met him and spent a little time with him when we did the Think and Grow Rich infomercial at Guthrie Renker, and he was then way up there, and tough as nails. But he and now the Napoleon Hill Foundation, which he created, own all the intellectual property rights to all of the Hill stuff, and they believe they own the rights to, like, any word that might somewhere have been said once by Napoleon Hill. They have a very aggressive law firm. I'm sure I'm not the only one. I know. Anybody in here deal with that yet besides me? You have, haven't you? Yeah. Yeah, Phil, you have. They actually will come after you for using the word success or philosophy. And pretty aggressively, too. But they and Disney, I think, are the two most aggressive protectors of intellectual property on the planet. Anyway, so Stone winds up really, really, really rich. And Hill winds up really, really, really poor. Although for a brief period in his time in his life, he was loaded. He was what the millionaire next door guys call, what the financial planning industry calls, high income underinvested. And meaning Rolls Royces, overbuilt mansions that when they are sold, they sell for 20% of what they cost to build, that kind of stuff. Having been one of those myself, I have some empathy for him. Anyway, he winds up broke, Stone winds up rich. And when I first heard this, it was disturbing to me. And then my curiosity was enormously aroused. And one of the things that we'll talk about a little bit today and wind up with, what I'll end with today, is the paramount and primary reason I believe that that Stone was rich and Hill was poor. But one is that Napoleon Hill had a philosophy built upon mostly observation, research, interviews. You guys all know the story, which, like all stories, incidentally, is slightly romanticized. But predominantly through observation, he had a philosophy. Stone took it and applied it, and the key word is applied or application, in an environment where it had a reasonable opportunity to produce money. And there's a real practical lesson there, which we'll come back to. The first half of the day, I thought we'd spend on the... Somebody asked a question. It's in the questions, the stack of questions, about me often referring to metaphysical stuff as, airy-fairy, sort of in a joking, or they took it as a derogatory manner, but you use it. And I took a class once in metaphysics, by the way. I failed the final exam. I was caught cheating, looking into the soul of the person next to me. That's for you. You can use it. I've tried to approach these things from a practical standpoint. And I find that a whole lot of the people who talk about this stuff, a whole lot of the people I've read, a whole lot of the people that I've met, their flaw in the ointment, in my opinion, is they are in, Dick Sutphin used to call them the sackcloth and ashes crowd. They're into every part of the metaphysics except practical application. And, you can't, I had an early mentor who said you can't eat philosophy. And you can't go down to the bank and put philosophy on a bank deposit slip. He's absolutely right. And so practical application is critically important. But there are some conceptual things. And so I thought the first half of the day we'd talk about some conceptual things. During the course of the day, I know there's a couple of people came up this morning, again, impressed me. I know there's immense curiosity about my personal sort of rituals and use of these things, which I'll be happy to tell you. But a lot of what I have to tell you is also from observation. One of the neat things about the way I've made my living is I've got to hang around with a whole lot of very affluent people, most of whom did not start with much and have built large incomes, and in many cases, some of them just large incomes and no wealth, but in many cases, a great deal of wealth. And I tried to figure it out before this seminar. I actually went through old client lists and current client lists, and I finally stopped at 130 some odd people that I know for a fact are in the double-digit millions to $10 million net worth range, who pretty much were at zero or just a decent income but no real wealth at one point in time. And so I've spent a lot of time with 130 plus of these people, more time with some than others. And in recent years, I've seen a fair number of people. We commented on it yesterday. Those of you that weren't here yesterday, the difference between the growth that has occurred, and this is a compliment, by the way, for many of you, the growth that has occurred in many of the people who are at this alumni event from as recently as the prior alumni event is striking. And the growth is in two areas. It's in mechanical or technical skill. I mean, the effectiveness of their marketing, what they had to show versus what they had shown us before, the improvement in their copywriting skills, the improvement in their ability to craft offers, all of that is really quite remarkable. And there are any number of people in this room who've gone in the last 2 or 3 years from modest incomes to very big incomes. A number of people in this room who their current monthly income was their annual income. You know, that's, there's commonalities there too. You watch enough of them, you notice a few things. The other kind of growth is attitudinal, which is a little harder to put your finger on, but you know, it's a closed loop. So I thought we'd do the conceptual stuff this morning, and then the practical application stuff this afternoon. And if we have time, which I suspect we will, a bunch of you have turned in questions. This time I've looked at them. And thrown out a few, none of which rival the first question of yesterday. So, you should be on page number 5. And page 5 and 6, actually. People actually think, and get ingrained in their heads, that there's some kind of zero-sum game going on here. That money taken from this person and moved to this person enriches this person at the expense of that person. And certainly the liberal politicians either believe it or pander to it, one or the other. But a whole lot of people have it operating at a beneath the surface level that affects a lot of what they do, and inhibits them in a lot of different ways. What they'll charge, for example, who they'll ask for money. Everybody in direct sales. Zig has a true story. Glenn Turner has a true story. I've got a true story. Everybody who's ever done direct sales much. By the way, is Bill Driscoll here today, or did Bill leave? Oh, Bill's here? Okay. I'll bet you got a story. Because what's the current price point for an average house for a fire alarm installation?
1,700, 1,800.
Okay. What, 10 years ago, 800? 900?
Yeah, probably 900.
Yeah, okay. So 10 years ago, my frame of reference for a fire alarm sale, a vacuum cleaner sale, a water purifier sale, a pot and pan sale, about 800 bucks. 20 years ago, 500, right? Yeah. And now you guys have got it up to 1,700. So this salesman, by the way, if any of you ever, let's see, how many of you have had a pot and pan pitch made to you in your house? God, you guys are deprived. How many of you have had a vacuum cleaner pitch made to you in your house? Okay, there's more of that. How many of you have had a fire alarm pitch made to you in your house? Oh, good. Hey, guys, somebody's out there. Okay, now how many of you have done any one of the three for a living? All right, well, every one of you has this story. All right? Because, oh, let's do books, too. Encyclopedia. Okay, there you go. Okay. Every one of you who's done this has some version of this story. You've seen it. And now it's 1,700 bucks. Of course, it's probably even more profound. So the fire alarm salesman with the stuffed Dalmatian under his arm and the crying dog film and you know, marches into the house and discovers that he is in a place of relative poverty, at least by his standards. He is sitting across the table. The two kids are in on a threadbare carpet in the living room. They probably have a good television, but pretty much everything else in the house, is obviously hand-me-down, beat up, falling apart, springs sticking up out of the couch seat. You know, you just clearly know that these people, you know, aren't doing well. Conversationally, you know, you discover, you know, Papa hadn't worked in 4 months, and, you know, the kid's got some kind of problem that causes big medical bills, and on and on and on and on. And the salesperson becomes increasingly queasy about closing these people on the $1,700 fire alarm sale, or the what's a vac now? $1,700, huh? On the $1,700 vacuum cleaner. And so the salesperson becomes increasingly queasy about this, and in many cases will not close. He'll deliberately throw the game at the end and toss that one aside and get out of there. Okay? And everybody then who has done this for any period of time has the person who rises up in the middle of the weak, wimpy attempt to throw the ball game close and is almost offended that they are not trying to sell it to them. Glenn tells a story of actually being chased by somebody who was mad that he wouldn't sell him a sewing machine. Zig has a similar pot and pan story. If you've heard Zig's story about the indoor plumbing customer that was saving up the money to put in indoor plumbing, and then he backed off, and the people were annoyed, and they really wanted the pots and pans. Huh?
Still works.
Oh yeah. They put indoor plumbing in next year, but you know, got to get the pots now. And of course, the pots pay for themselves, you know, because they say, you know. So really, they're free after 24 months of what you saved on utilities. The queasiness about price, about who somebody is selling to, about their ability to pay, their ability to afford it. Anytime you start to make those decisions for other people, it really reflects more about what's going on internally with you than it does with anything else. And the other thing to remember is that people who are without money that you perceive to be disadvantaged for one reason or another, and you question whether you should sell them something. Regardless of whether you get any of their money or not, they're going to be without money next week too. The reason they're without money has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with your existence, nor does it have to do with the way money works in the real world. It has to do with them. And whether you take it, somebody else takes it, the liquor store takes it, the church takes it, whoever takes it, I promise you somebody's getting it. Because if they're without money now, they're going to be without money again. And most of them are going to be without money permanently because they never fix the things that we're talking about that have to do with whether or not you have money. And it happens at all levels. I mean, we have people selling $50,000 programs to doctors. At one time, Tracy's, I get all confused with familial relationships. Is Rod your uncle? Yeah, okay. I mean, Rodney and I were selling a $36,000 program to doctors in the early 80s. And at least 70% of the doctors who bought couldn't afford to pay attention. I mean, let alone a $36,000 program. But when you're selling help to people, when you're a success merchant, there's only two buyers. There's the already extremely successful who don't need it, who buy everything because they practice the principle of the slight edge. And there's the starving and desperate looking for a life raft. The middle is not the market. And so if you only took the rich, you would starve. And so the queasiness has to go away. You got this doctor who just had his car repossessed, is having trouble keeping the lights on in the office, and is getting more calls from bill collectors than he is from new patients. And you're going to walk him down to 4 different finance companies and blast 6 of his credit cards to get $36,000 from him to put him into a management program. You can't have any queasiness. You can't have any reluctance. And you have to understand that the reason he's where he is has nothing to do with you, the guy who came before you, the guy who came after you. It all has to do with him. And there's plenty of money to go around. Nobody's ever go run out of dough. And there's no excuse to be broke in America. Anybody can tomorrow start from zero, and they can get a bucket and a sponge, or they can, you know, and these chiropractors. I mean, I know lawyers who are broke. Can you imagine this? I mean, I'm serious. They get out of school with a license to steal money. Okay? And some of these people can't cut it. Well, it has nothing to do with any shortages. It has nothing to do with any money anybody takes from them. It totally has to do with them. There's plenty of dough. And now we have all the recession stuff going on, you know, and the media is desperately trying to sell everybody the idea that things are bad and are going to get worse for a variety of reasons. And so some people will believe that now that there's a shortage of money because there's a war. Other people think there's a shortage of money because there's a tax cut. Other people think there's no shortage of money. There's money everywhere. Just walk around, look around, you know. And you got to get past the zero-sum game idea that when somebody gives up money to you that you've profited and they've lost and there's less money over here now than there is over here, the money just keeps replenishing. It's always there. It's just some people don't see it, and some people aren't smart enough to bend over and pick it up. But it's always there, and there's plenty of it. The other big thing to get is there's mountains of dumb money out there. Okay? And so if you want to, you can more than satisfy your needs just dipping into the pond of dumb money. One of my favorites, this is, I forget what catalog this is from. It's not Neiman Marcus, which you usually find this stuff in Neiman's. It's not Neiman Marcus, but here's, I don't know what catalog this is. Gentleman's Domain. This is owned by Frontgate. This thing's been in for 3 catalogs. They ain't wasting the space to have fun. For, where's the price point here? The Eli Bridge Company in Jacksonville, Illinois. Now give these guys points if they initiated this for getting themselves in a catalog. The Eli Bridge Company builds amusement park rides, like the famous Scrambler, which is this thing. Okay? They've been building them for 100 years. And now, for only $300,000, they'll put that thing in your backyard. They'll build you a 67-foot-high, 16-seat Ferris wheel. You'll need a 220-volt power outlet. Gee, no shit. And since it weighs almost 20 tons, you may want to have the patio checked out before getting started. By the way, that's right, you saw the Shed Shop infomercial. The happy couple with the 2 sheds in their backyard, the his and her sheds, they're both retired and they're on Social Security, and he's got 1 small pension. They're totally on fixed incomes. 2 sheds. 1 ain't enough. The guy with the shed and the big pond in his backyard, you remember him? Oh, you should have heard his sob story. If you heard the sob story first, you would never think this guy's going to pop for 20 grand of landscaping, a koi pond, and a shed in his backyard. I mean, the poor soul hadn't got 2 nickels. His whole family doesn't have 2 nickels. But somebody sold him a koi pond, and he likes his koi pond. For a $75,000 upsell, you can get the mobile model. These guys are funny. That folds for compact storage in any 80-foot-long garage. You can take care of this, by the way, on 3 easy payments. Nokia has a new line of cell phones. And I know there are some of you in the room who like the latest doohickey. So if you don't have this, you got to have it. It's made out of gold and platinum, and it sells for $20,000. It is an experiment in exquisite design and craftsmanship. Oh, it's also large, because obviously you don't want to have a $20,000 phone and have somebody not see it. Remember, years ago, a friend of mine got rather, I thought, oversized breast implants and began to dress rather provocatively, and her answer to that was, if you buy a new Jaguar, you don't leave it in the garage with a tarp on it. Anyway, this oversized phone, here's how they explain this. There's a size to proportion balance that has a calming effect. Yeah, $20,000 phone. I had a client that sold a $3,000 coffee pot. I mean, that's even better than a $1,700 vacuum cleaner. There's plenty of money. And by the way, everybody, including everybody in here, has some kind of interest on which they spend dumb money. They spend silly amounts of money. Every single person on the planet does. You can play golf. Dumb money. Well, first of all, golf only exists because of marriage. Okay? No, there would be no golf. It had to have been invented. It was invented in Scotland, right? The guys had to be married. This is a conversation of, we can't get out of the house. How are we going to get out of the house? We'll invent this game. Okay? And we'll make it look so stupid, they'll actually feel sorry for us playing it. So we won't use a straight stick. We'll have a doofusy-looking bent stick. Okay? We'll make the game about hitting on a little ball into a little hole, but let's put the hole like 400 yards away. That'll be good. Okay? We'll make it a long walk. I mean, seriously, the only reason golf exists is because 4 guys can't figure out how to get out of the house with a better excuse than this. And if they all go to their wives and say, we're going to go hang out for 4 hours in a bar and tell dirty jokes to each other, the wives say, no, you're not. But they say, we're going to go play golf. Oh, well, all right, go play golf. So golf was invented because of marriage. But, I mean, if you play golf, think of the dumb money you spend. I mean, and the people who sell to golfers know. It's what Jeff Paul calls the irrationally rabid market. Meaning all sanity goes out the window. We'll spend any amount of money on that pastime. Every one of you has one of them. Might be boats, might be airplanes, might be raising Vietnamese potbelly pigs, might be racehorses, might be whatever it is, but we all got something we spend dumb money on. Any amount. Doesn't make any difference, right? Everybody's got at least one. Some people have like multiples. All right? And everybody's got one. Even poor people got them. Even poor people got them. Now, it's proportionate spending, but even poor people got it. My brother's got no money, but he's got one of the most expensive pool tables you can buy. He's got a handmade, scientifically bioengineered, computer designed, imported from somewhere, personal cue stick. He's got a car that none of you would get in. But he's got a cue stick. The cue stick's worth more than the car. All right? Doesn't bother him. Pool is his thing. Yeah, he is pretty good. Not good enough to make any money, but that's, I mean, he probably is good enough to make money. But so there's all this money floating around, being spent on all this stuff. And then people get tight about, oh, I'm a little queasy about closing this guy on $1,700 worth of fire alarms. Hey, at least you're keeping him from burning to death, you know. I mean, a vacuum cleaner, at least the house is going to be clean. You know, the $1,700 pool cue ain't doing him a whole lot of good. I mean, so there's all this money floating around, and yet people are all kind of tight. And I mean, you've seen it in our group, how hard I've had to work just on price. Just to get people to inch up their prices. And some of that, fear-based, but some of it is this issue of taking too much money from somebody. You know, I'm taking an unfair amount of money from them. I'm handicapping them. Well, what's all that based on? It's based on the thought that there's not enough money to go around and that it's very hard for them to replace that money. It's based on the idea that money's hard to replace. If you substitute the idea that money's easy to replace, then all the trepidation about how much you take from any one given person for whatever it is that you do goes out the window because it's easily replaceable. Very fluid. And it is easily replaceable. It's the easiest thing there is on the planet to replace. House burns down. The house you can replace. Furniture, you can, you know, the pictures, your family heirlooms, that kind of stuff you can't replace. But the rest of it's easily replaceable. Money's easy to replace. But people think it's hard to replace, and everything they do is then kind of governed by that conditioning. The people who attract tons of money and have no hang-ups about taking it have come to the conclusion that there's an abundant supply of it, more than anybody could ever possibly use, and that it's easy to get more of it. We did the show of hands yesterday. The incredible commonality amongst successful entrepreneurs of those who have been broke or formerly gone through bankruptcy. And for those of you that weren't here yesterday, I mean, it's like the majority of the hands. And as somebody said, the rest of them are lying. But I believe the reason that is because it's that whole experience is a major step in discovering how easy it is to replace it. Because at the time you think it's terminal, at the time you think it's fatal, because you think money's hard to replace. And then when you recover, realization begins to dawn. So the first big impediment to getting money is the idea that there are limits to it, that it's a zero-sum game, that it's hard to replace, that you harm somebody by taking their hard-to-replace money from them. There's a term people use. You know the term? We use it in some cases in sales copy. You have to be careful about the vocabulary you use when you sell versus the vocabulary you believe. Here's the term: hard-earned dollars. All recognize the term, don't you? Hard-earned dollars. It's the implication. Hard to get them. Those of you that got, how many got kids? And how many times in the past month have you explained to the kids that money doesn't grow on trees? Where does that come from? Well, it's because everybody becomes their father, right? That's the deal. You know, and you find yourself saying the same crap that used to annoy you when they said, we don't even think about it. It's been programmed in, and now at a particular point in time in life, we're regurgitating it and spitting it back out with no thought about what it's doing to us or what it's doing to the person that we're saying it to. But when we say it, what belief system are we communicating? Hard to get. Yeah. And any reinforcement of that that's going on for you is detrimental to you. It'll bind you up in all sorts of ways that you can't imagine. If you're thinking, it's hard to get. This is not in your manual, but I like it. Here's the caption. I know you missed the Wainwrights, Bobby, but they were weak and stupid people, and that's why we have wolves and other large predators. I think this is your page 8. Here's programming that doesn't help you any. There's a whole now economic political push about excessive profits. Okay? And you will hear that term more and more and more and more and more in the media. It's in places it shouldn't be, like the Wall Street Journal. Fortune. Yeah, you won't find it. I haven't found it in Forbes, by the way, and I read Forbes every month. I haven't found it in Forbes. But you'll find it in the Wall Street Journal. There's a lot of talk about this whole issue of excess profits. And those of you that are incorporated undoubtedly know you're only allowed to take so much profit out of your own company every year without paying excess distribution taxes. Okay. Oh, you're taking too much money. Okay. And there's an idea, for example, much proliferated, attributed to Rockefeller, which he never had anything to do with, that the top person's compensation in a company should only be a preset multiple of the lowest wage paid in the same company. And so there's a lot of talk about the outrageousness of CEO compensation has a ratio against what the broom-pushing person's wage is. And so everybody's getting beat up on this idea of excess profits. And the ratio argument, for example, the CEO compensation is controlled by marketplace value. And if the guy takes too much money, too many times in a row, the marketplace catches up to him, and he's gone. All right? So everybody, like right now, is screaming and yelling about Eisner and a handful of guys who took their $20 million bonuses last year, even though shareholder value went down 18%, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, if in fact he's being irrationally and unfairly compensated, a couple of years from now, he'll be where the CEO of Sprint is this year. He'll be gone. And he'll pay hell getting hired anyplace else. The marketplace catches up. Okay? But what the ratio argument completely ignores is his compensation is determined by marketplace value, even if it's a trailing indicator rather than a predictive indicator. The guy who pushes the broom, that job has a finite definable worth. And if you base one on the other, there's no real rationale for that. It sounds good when you talk about it, but it doesn't make any sense. Further, incidentally, the longevity argument, big problem for those of you that employ people, right? Because employee mentality has been taught that the longer you do a job, the more you should be paid for doing it, right? The union is based on that. However, certain jobs only have a certain value. Doesn't matter how long you do them. If you tighten a bolt on the side of a doohickey, that's worth X cents, period. It can't be worth Y cents just because you've been standing there tightening the same bolt for 50 years. You didn't add any value to you're not tightening the bolt 50 times faster. That would make the job worth more money. You're not tightening the bolt in a way that cut the recall rate by 50%. That would make the job worth more money. But just tightening the same bolt at the same speed just because you've been doing it for 50 years didn't add any value to anything. But as you know, if you employ people, what do they expect? Annual raise, sure, periodic raises. Why? Why is that job worth any more this year than it was last year? Arguably, it might be worth even less. But it doesn't inherently become worth more, but people think it. And so they have in their head, I'm not going to, I will stop and do it, okay? They have in their head now that it should be. The second thing on the list is this entire topic of people who are less fortunate than you are. There are some such people. I mean, obviously there's an enormous amount of economic ignorance in the country. And people who've never had any exposure, you know, you can't really fault somebody for not getting a bucket and a sponge and going out there and being entrepreneurial and getting rich if they've never seen it, if they have no exposure to it, if they don't know it exists. But often, those less fortunate, that's a synonym purely for those less industrious. It's not that they haven't seen it. It's not that they don't know. It's certainly not that they couldn't go see it. They just don't. And to have guilt about them, but a lot of people have their money-making capabilities suppressed by guilt about these kind of issues. Oh, there's all these people less fortunate than I, therefore it would somehow be better if I didn't keep the next thing, the gap. If the gap didn't keep getting wider. Well, the gap, now here's some stats. This is really important because people don't get it. Inflation-adjusted incomes of families from 1998 to 2001 rose across all demographic groups. That's Ronald Reagan's rising tide lifts all boats. There's no way to raise the lower level without raising the top level. Can't happen. If we don't get richer, they can't get less poor. Can't happen. It's economically impossible. And so the old joke, the best thing you can do for the poor people is not be one of them. Second best thing for you to do for them is get as rich as you possibly can. Because you're automatically going to pull some up. Why? Because you're going to spend more dumb money. And the more dumb money that's out there floating around, the more everybody benefits. But there's the argument about the widening gap. Oh, we got to do something about the gap. Got to do something about the gap. The gap's no wider than it's ever been. It's just more visible. There's always going to be a big gap. The issue of greed. Too often achievement, accomplishment, ambition is defined as greed. Is getting the most money possible for the goods or services you deliver, greed or intelligence? Is it greed or ambition? Are you a better person if you voluntarily get less money than you could for the goods or the services you deliver? If these guys suddenly reduce their price on fire alarms to $1,400 from $1,700, did the door into heaven get any wider when Driscoll drops? Opportunist. American Greetings, maybe you've seen this in the news. American Greetings has rushed to the presses with a line of greeting cards to be sent to the military in Iraq. And so if you have somebody over there you want to send a greeting card to, by the way, they're in the stores. And there's what they call the romantic ones. There's a picture of a great-looking babe in a camouflage piece of lingerie standing next to a bed. And the caption is, "I've got some maneuvers to show you when you get home." There's ones for brothers, there's one for sisters, there's one, they've created a whole line. And they're getting massive publicity, by the way, as a result of this. CNN, MSNBC, Entertainment Tonight, USA Today. I saw the first big critical discussion of this on some talk show last night, in which it should come to no surprise to any of us that Janine Garofalo, whatever her name is, thinks this is horrible, that we are profiteering, some company is profiteering on this tragic series of events. And if in fact they are going to sell these things, they should be giving all the money away. Yeah. Well, of course, that's exactly the point. Good point. Yeah, Elliot said as if she's not profiteering from the interview. Of course. Now, she may devoutly believe her position. By the way, I happen to think I would put her in a category with Hillary, and I mean, I think she believes her shtick. And by the way, no, of course not. And I have more respect for somebody I devoutly disagree with who devoutly believes their position than I do anybody else. And I don't begrudge her getting on TV and mouthing off about it either. But it is an illustration of a position that is very often taken about this thing called opportunism. And yet what opportunism is entrepreneurship. That's what it is. See, every man's tragedy is somebody else's opportunity. That's commerce. Fire alarm business wouldn't exist if there weren't fires. You can't sell alarms if somebody wasn't having a house burned down around them. If there were no deaths, there'd be no business. So now they position their business as the mission to protect people, to save lives. That's how they sell it. But it wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the tragic problem in the first place. Cops wouldn't have jobs if there was no crime. If we could eliminate all the crime tomorrow, we'd have, I don't know, how many cops are there? Clinton claims he put another 100,000 on the streets, so I don't know, millions unemployed. Now what do we do? Now what? See, all commerce, the whole flow of where money moves, a big reason money moves is tragedy, disaster, crisis, problems, ugly, horrible human events. So one man's tragedy is another man's opportunity. Entrepreneurship's all about opportunism. Gas station raises its prices on the Friday before a holiday weekend. Is he an evil opportunist? What do you think? It's all part and parcel of what he must do in order to achieve maximum success in his business. Because at other times during the calendar year, there are price wars in his neighborhood. And he sells his gas for less than it costs him in order to stay in business. If he's in an extremely competitive environment, he sells his gas at a loss the entire time in order to get repair business into the bays. There's all sorts of fluctuations in his business. He better make maximum profits when the opportunity presents itself in order to compensate for the times when he can't make any profit at all. Person who owns the convenience store in the middle of a gang-ridden ghetto where nobody else will open a store. And he mostly sells to people who can't get 20 miles away to the nearest supermarket. Therefore, he sells at double what you could buy the same products for if you could get to the supermarket 20 miles away. Is he an evil opportunist? Well, would you go open a store there? If his store's not there, how do they get anything at all? His risk is enormously higher than the guy 20 miles away with the supermarket. Every time he walks into a store, there's a pretty good chance somebody's going to walk in the door and blow his head off or try. His theft rate's probably 400 or 500% worse than the supermarket 20 miles away. For assuming all of that added risk, shouldn't he be an opportunist? Getting all this stuff out of your head and being okay with being the predator is necessary for maximum money. About those less fortunate, by the way, I have my favorite list. Actually, I have two lists. Just trivia, but this is the average person's list of reasons for not doing well. Some of them we hear from our people. Everybody in my city buys by price. Nobody in my town uses credit cards. Everybody in my town is whatever. There's a giant advertiser in my town. I never get the good leads. If you got salespeople, you hear that one. It's the time of year. There's already too many doohickeys in my town. That's the opposite of the people we talked about yesterday who are all panicked that some of them are going out of business. I hear this from clients. I like this one. What I do is so unique nobody understands it. Let's see. It's the economy. It's my spouse, my staff. Now, here's the less fortunate list. These are from actual interviews. This is people's biggest problem is getting to work on time. Okay, this is why they don't do well. Here's why they can't get to work on time. Sometimes my car won't start. Okay? The damn bus driver comes early. These are actual interviews. I'm not making this up. I can't hear the alarm clock. I used to have that problem. I put a coffee can on top of it. When it rings, you hear the sound. The dog hides my shoes. Is this incredible? I just can't get going in them. I'm not a morning person. Well, so I shouldn't be required to get to work in the morning. I'm not a morning person. The 7 is better. My mother was never a morning person. It's mom's fault I can't get to work on time. It's hereditary. It's just too tough. It's unfair to ask somebody to be there at exactly the same time every morning. Now get this. These are the less fortunate people you are supposed to feel sorry for while you're making money.
But they believe it.
Of course they believe it. But see, their beliefs are not our responsibility. Okay? That's not our problem. Okay? Our beliefs are our responsibility, not theirs. You can't in any way help this nitwit who thinks because her mother couldn't get up in the morning that she can't get to work. You can't help her by making less money. That does her no good. And you don't hurt her by making as much money as is humanly possible. She still ain't getting to work. She's not going to get there any later because you made an extra mill this year. She's going to be just as dysfunctional as she is now, no matter how much or how little money you make. I like on page 11, Andrew Carnegie. The redistribution of wealth deal. Carnegie says, give me two numbers, the world's population and the value of all my assets. Then give this idiot 16 cents because that's what it divides out to and get him out the door. Best answer to the redistribution of wealth argument I ever heard. You can divide it all up and don't make it. You can take it all away from everybody that's got it. There are 3 states right now who have proposed excess wealth taxes. All right? The first one is the state of Vermont, from which a presidential candidate by the name of Howard Dean is running. You might not have noticed. They have proposed a special tax on millionaires. This is redistribution of wealth scheme. This is if we take an extra $10,000 a year from each of the millionaires who live here, they won't miss it. They don't need all that money. And then we can redistribute it after, of course, the government eats its 72% overhead. We can redistribute it to all the people who don't have any. And how will this help anybody? It won't. All it'll do is convince a bunch of millionaires to move to Connecticut. That's what it'll do. People don't get this. I flew cross-country one time with Walter Mondale as my seatmate. And we had a lively conversation. Now, I'm going to tell you something.
Is that a bonus tape, Dan?
I came away convinced that he devoutly believes that, and I'm not implying the man's dumb, because he's not dumb. He devoutly believes that you can actually tax business. He thinks that. Just like these people now think you can tax these millionaires, take money away from them, and have no ramifications. Well, see, businesses don't pay taxes. Customers pay taxes. Nobody that runs a business ever absorbs a tax. You guys know that. You run businesses. What do? We do one of two things. They raise our taxes, we raise our prices, or we cut jobs. We don't take a cut. I've never taken a pay cut. Somebody whacks me with a new tax, somebody else is going to pay it, I'm not. Exact same attitude about my divorce settlement. It's why it didn't really bother me. I mean, I said, I don't know exactly who's going to pay this, but it ain't going to be me, mama. You know? Somebody else is forking this dough over. Well, that's how business people think. It's how you should think. You get whacked with an excess tax, you're not going to pay it. Mondale thinks the business pays it and nothing else happens. These redistribution of wealth guys think you can actually tax these millionaires and nothing else is going to happen. They're just going to sit there and let you take money away from them and not go get it back. They're going to get it. Housekeepers going to go from 5 days a week to 3 days a week. They're not going to buy a boat this year, which if enough of them don't buy a boat, there's a whole bunch of people in the boat business that aren't going to work. Somewhere, they're getting the money. And I don't care if they got 100 million. They can't stand to lose 10,000. Nor should they. So Carnegie's argument was brilliant. Now, here's my question for you. What is, I don't have the slide, page 12. What is your entrepreneurial responsibility? What is the entrepreneur's responsibility? What must you do in order to be fair and just and deserve your place on the planet? Well, here's what a lot of people think. They think your purpose, your responsibility in life is to provide jobs. Okay? You see that reflected in the communities that are busily trying to pass laws, and in some cases, communities and states suing companies to keep them from moving or closing, because their responsibility is to provide jobs to the community. Is your responsibility to provide jobs? I hope you don't think so. A lot of people think your responsibility is to pay taxes. You were put on earth for the purpose. Here's what I want now. I was telling somebody this the other day. I think we'd all be happier with this program, by the way. I just got my tax bill. I want pictures like of Iraqi citizens and welfare recipients. I want, like, when you send money to the starving orphan deal and you get the picture and you get a letter once in a while, you know, about how they're doing. I think every taxpayer should get some of those and have people signed to them. So for your money, you got a picture up here of these 17 Iraqi people and these 4 welfare recipients and this retired guy. So you can put them all the people you're supporting up on the refrigerator, and they should all have to write you notes every once in a while, let you know how they're doing. I'd feel better, wouldn't you? is your responsibility to improve your customers' lives. Better get that out of your head. In our business, this is fatal. And it really isn't any other business. Now, it's pretty smart to sell them things that if they use them as you intended, will improve their lives. That's smart. But it's not your responsibility to see that it gets done. Nor should you lose any sleep over the fact that many don't. And in my business, see, a whole lot of what I sell, I mean, all kidding aside, the shrink wrap don't come off. And you will kill yourself in my business if you worry about making them take off the shrink wrap. Mostly, they just get mad at you. Not my responsibility. I didn't have any of the fun of giving birth to them. They ain't going to support me in my old age. They're on their own. Here's the thing. Use it, don't matter to me. It's one of the great lessons I learned early in life in the multi-level industry was I didn't want to be there. Because your money's dependent on actually getting them to do something. Lousy position to be in. Want the money and then leave it up to them to do something. If they do, they do. If they don't, they don't. And so again, like in my business, look at the numbers. We got, what, 150 people here out of 46,000? All right? Why? You're the 150 who took off the shrink wrap. Am I losing sleep about the, whatever that number is, 45,800? No, I got over it a long time ago. You got to too. If the guy puts the shed in his backyard and never moves the crap out of the garage into the shed and still can't park the car in the garage, or has a more probable result, he moves all the crap out of the garage into the shed and then restocks the garage with more crap and still can't park the car in the garage, should Paul go out there and give him his money back? Right? Well, yeah, sell him another shed. That's exactly right. Now we're getting it. Yeah. Sell him garbage removal service. Sell him how to do a garage sales kit. Sell him something. That's sell him something. The entrepreneur's responsibility is this: maximum profit and wealth to his shareholders. If you're the sole shareholder, that's you. Then your responsibility is just to play fair. Not lie, cheat, steal. Those 10 Commandment things. What do you want to bet, Jay? And actually, you may even have a comment on this. What do you want? Here's what Jay does, by the way, on one of his businesses. Is with chiropractic offices, the inbound call, well, with any business, by the way, but with chiropractic offices, the inbound call is critically important. You spend a lot of money on advertising to make the phone ring, and then Barbara is the one answering the phone. And there's all sorts of mechanical problems. Barbara thinks it's a receptionist function, not an inbound sales function, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what do you want to bet that in many cases, Barbara's inability to schedule a lot of the patients and motivate them to show up is actually rooted in a lot of stuff going on in her subconscious about the fact that the doctor charges too much, he makes too much money, he's doing too well, he's driving too nice a car, and this poor person who needs care, it's unfair for that person to have to pay so much money. What do you want to bet? Jay, you got...
Well, I mean, I think the best example is that when they ask them the question, do you have insurance? And 80% of them, they say, no, I don't have insurance. They say, okay, well, thanks for calling. And that's it. I mean, no insurance, no insurance.
Yeah, he tapes all the calls. He private audits the calls. Okay. Which, by the way, if you haven't done this, you've got to call your own, you've got to mystery shop your own store, your own office, your own place of business. A lot. Because you will be really shocked at what happens. Get somebody who knows what they're doing, somebody in your mastermind group. We do it in our coaching groups to crisscross call and play prospect and tape the call for you. You'll be nauseated. Okay. You'll be sick. You'll be terrified. But a lot of it is this. And so they don't have insurance. Here's what goes through the person's head. Oh my God. When we taught prepay, we taught chiropractors prepay. That is, how many of you have been to a chiropractor? Okay, good. So you know the drill, right? You go in, you exam, the x-rays, the report of findings, which is the sales presentation. Okay? Well, it's supposed to be. Where they show you the x-rays and tell you your spine's going to fall out if you don't come in 18 times a week for the first 6 weeks and 5 times a week. Okay, you got it, right? Well, prepay is case presentation, and so it's 18 times a week for the first 3 weeks and 6 times a week, and that all totals up to $7,862, and there's 3 ways you can take care of that. You can get your checkbook out, take care of it in 1 payment, and you save $800. Or you can do it in 3 payments, predate the checks, or we got a household finance contract here, and we can get you a loan. Now, it's done a little more elegant than that, you understand, but that's the deal. By the way, you can take a chiropractor who's barely keeping the light bill on, and you can take him to $40,000 a month like this if he'll do prepay, because he only needs 4 new patients that he can close. When we taught prepay, the mechanical process of this, by the way, works just like their fire alarm sales presentation works. If the doc will actually do the presentation, if he's bad, 1 out of 4 will say yes. If he's pretty good, 2 out of 4 will say yes. If he's really good, 3 out of 4 will say yes. But even if he's bad, 1 out of 4 will say yes, if he'll just run the presentation. We had to kill to get anybody to do the presentation. In part because they didn't believe anybody would give them the money, but mostly because they felt all kinds of guilt about asking somebody for $7,000 in advance. And we're coming up to a break pretty quick anyway. We can deal with it on a break. But then, if we could get the doc to do it, the next problem was the sabotage by the staff. Because where's their head at? This poor person with no insurance is coming in here, and they're an office manager, which is what I am. And I know they can't afford. And Doc's driving a Jaguar, that miserable SOB with his excessive profits. So how hard is Barbara going to work at scheduling that appointment? Not very hard at all. Consciously or subconsciously, she's going to keep that person out of the office. Happens in all kinds of businesses. The reason more stuff isn't sold? Because of all the guilt. That's why more stuff isn't sold. Let's do one more before our break. Here's one that'll get us into all kinds of trouble. Let's try 13. Here's the key word on this page. Just. If you want to underline something, underline the word just. Because the implication of this, here's how people respond to this if they believe it. They think that their lack of success, or the way to be more successful, their lack of money, or the way to get more of it, is to scrub harder, is to be a more deserving person. And they equate the fact they don't have what they want to them not being a sufficiently deserving person. And if I just scrub harder, things will turn around for me. Now, the metaphysical version of this is equivalent. The metaphysical version of this is, I'm just not using the mental principles well enough. If I just think more positively, keyword just, things will turn around. It's another clue to why Hill was broke, Stone was rich. It's not the main reason, but it's a clue. Many of you know or know of Foster Hibbard. We're going to talk about some of his stuff a little later. When I got Foster, Foster was in the metaphysical version of this category. Foster believed in the word just. Not justice, but the just. All you should have to do, all you had to do in order to attract unlimited wealth was to get this right, to live the philosophy. He didn't get that you had to apply it in an environment where it had a reasonable opportunity of producing money, and you had to ask for the dough. Missed that part. So he's running around teaching prosperity to everybody with no prosperity, which pretty much, by the way, describes 90% of the people who run around and teach prosperity. If you want a great analogy to this, to help you try and get rid of it, it's the argument that 9/11 was our fault in whole or part because we have so much and other countries have so little, and because we have an immoral society. And so if we were just more moral and we were just more generous, we wouldn't deserve what happened to us on 9/11, and it never would have happened. Therefore, we should close the Defense Department and take all that money and divide it up between the less fortunate people in all these other countries, and we should spend it on churches and moral education in this country, and we don't need a Defense Department. You like that plan? Well, if you don't like that plan, you can't like this plan either, because it's the same plan. It's the same idea that if all we have to do is make ourselves more deserving people, and somehow the wealth will then fall out of the tree. No, it won't. Some of the gentlest, kindest, most deserving folks on the planet are broke, stay broke, always broke. Some of the hardest working people on the planet. See, some people, well, we were talking about this a little bit yesterday, but I'm always amused. I mean, some business people actually think they're working. I have clients say to me, I mean, there's a guy in the room right now who could be making 4 times the money he's making. I don't want to run a 16-step sequence and worry about getting all that mail out. It's too much work. Hey, the people who are really working hard are the people making minimum wage. They're working. The folks who work for us, you want to see somebody work, you come spend a day at the track. These people get $200 a week per horse to take care of a horse. Most of them have 3 horses. They get there at 6 o'clock in the morning. They work until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm talking hard physical manual labor. Most of you may remember that. I'm talking hard physical manual labor. Okay? At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, if they're lucky, they go take a nap. 5 nights a week, when we have live racing, they start again at 6 o'clock at night. Depending upon how late a race their horse is in, they get done between 11 o'clock at night and 1 o'clock in the morning. And the next day, they're back at 6. In this climate, in the winter, the barn ain't heated. All right? In the summer, it ain't air conditioned. It's a barn. All right? So they're either sweating or they're freezing. They're getting stomped on, shit on, peed on, kicked, rolled over, all for no money. They work. Most of us wouldn't last a week. I mean, you'd be laying on the ground. Huh? You want me to do what? You know? Hey, a big revelation since I was there as a kid. When I came back, they switched to wheelbarrows. This is the big technological improvement in the whole deal. I'm serious. When I left, you put the shit in a big basket, and you hiked it up on your hip, and you carried it the length of the barn, and then you heaved it into the big wagon where they come and haul the manure away. They've put ramps on the wagons. Somebody figured this out after 50 years. They put ramps on the wagons, and they use a wheelbarrow.
They have that in Carthage.
Huh? This is the big technological improvement in the racing industry, is wheelbarrows. Nothing else has changed. I was gone for 20 years, everything else is the same. Okay? This is it. So now they use wheelbarrows. But I mean, still, this is back-breaking manual labor, long hours. I'm sure it violates some kind of federal labor law somewhere. Right? Chat, as bad as they may be, every one of his guys who actually goes out and does the pest control jobs works a lot harder than he does. They don't get near the money he does. See, it doesn't have anything to do with work. God forbid it should have to do. I mean, if we revise that whole system, let's pay people based on the hard work that they do. You can't run an economic system that way. You got the most money going to the dumbest mules on the planet. Nobody's left to run anything. It all collapses. So it's not work. Right? So whether we're into the Harrisons with their, again, whatever Christian, Catholic, Jewish combination guilt thing that you guys got burdened with, or we're into the metaphysical sackcloth and ashes crowd, it's pretty much the same deal. Everybody's focused on this word just in this paragraph, and if I was just better, now, does being better help? Yeah. Does being a better person help? Sure. Should you try and be a better person? Sure. Okay. Does being a more moral person help? Sure. But alone, is it going to get the job done? No. Some of the gentlest, kindest, most moral people I've ever met are walking around with empty pockets and empty refrigerators at home. And some of the hardest working people you and I could find anywhere on the planet got empty refrigerators and empty pockets. And a lot of them are trying to fix it this way. Well, maybe if I go to church 4 times a week instead of twice a week. Maybe if I go work in a soup kitchen. Maybe if I just figure out a way to deserve it more, I'll get it. The system doesn't work that way. Here's why. It's your next page. Now I've lost that one. Okay. Yeah, here it is. Money doesn't have a conscience. Okay. It's paper. That's all it is. It's just paper. It's not significantly different. We have some printers in the room. It's not significantly different than the paper that's in your book. It's green, and it's got some kind of woven crap in it so that theoretically we can't counterfeit it. But it's paper. Right? It doesn't know if you're a priest or a pornographer. These days. Look, it's paper. That's all it is. That's all it is. Nothing more, nothing less. It's just paper. That's it. That's all. Right? Doesn't have a conscience, doesn't know what you are, doesn't know what you do, doesn't care. It just moves around. That's all. Right? If it worked that way, there never could be an Enron. There couldn't have been a Jesse James. Same guys. Okay? Couldn't be. because the money would stop before it got to them. It would say, it would put on the brakes, it would speak, it would say, wait a minute. You're doing something we don't approve of. We're not coming into your hands. The stuff would work like, Matrix movie stuff. It would stop, go back, and you wouldn't be able to get it. Well, it doesn't do that. Right? As a matter of fact, the second quote's a real good one. Money's attracted to go where it will increase the fastest. The stuff likes to multiply like rabbits. It likes to breed. It likes to go where it will have friends. Doesn't want to be in a pocket by itself. By the way, that's why you should always carry a bunch of it. I'm serious, the stuff gets lonely. And if it's lonely, it goes looking for an environment where it's to have some friends. So give it some friends. It comes where it'll increase the fastest. Doesn't care what that is. Right? Now, that doesn't mean you should be a pornographer. I'm not suggesting that. It doesn't mean you should run Enron. I'm not suggesting that. What I'm suggesting is you got to get out of your head that by not doing those things and by doing things that are, quote, quote, good, that alone attracts and multiplies wealth, because it doesn't. It may make your next life a better deal. You may be in the cool place instead of the warm place. You may not come back as a toad, depending on, whatever your belief system is. It may have enormous impact on that, but in terms of whether the money comes to this pocket or not, no, it doesn't have any impact. If it did, you couldn't pick an industry. You couldn't have, 2/3 of all the e-commerce today is still adult entertainment. Most people believe that shouldn't be the way it is, but it is. And a significant percentage, I'm always amused, people get all bent out of shape, talk about pornography, but they own AT&T stock. Anybody own AT&T stock? AT&T stock. AT&T makes a ton of dough off 900 numbers. They make a ton of dough off the internet access to the porn sites. Anybody own Hilton stock, Marriott stock? Oh, damn. Well, you're in all of it, aren't you, babe? Hotel industry's in trauma right now because of the lawsuits that are beginning in certain states to try and block them from providing adult entertainment in room movies. Why? Because it's 20% of the bottom line. That's why. You take that out of there, you got a big problem. Anybody own General Motors stock? A lot of people own GM stock. GM owns a company called Vivid Entertainment. Oh, some people know what Vivid Entertainment is. You can't get more money just by being a better person. Key word is just. You get more money by doing things that produce money. Let's take us a 15-minute break and start back at 11 o'clock. While we're waiting for people to get in their seats, a couple of things mentioned me on the break you may find interesting. Make sure I don't screw this up now, Judith. But Judith told me of one of her employees who every year comes to her and needs a raise, which, of course, by the way, because they need it, you are, of course, obligated to give it. And so, man or woman, it doesn't matter, but okay, so she comes to Judith every year and needs her annual raise. And Judith says to me, and so I sit down with her and I say, fine, you've got a raise as soon as you enroll in this course and you go to this seminar and you study this stuff. And as soon as you enroll, raise is a done deal. Not after you finish, right? As soon as you do these three things and get started, the raise is a done deal. My question to her was, how many years have you gone without giving her a raise? Okay? Her answer is 14. Matt mentioned to me, I mean, it's priceless, Judith. It's priceless.
You shouldn't have it if you just don't use her name. I really would hate to lose her.
Yeah, well, I doubt that there's any risk of that at this point. I think you could probably die and she'd come for at least 2 pay periods before she gave up. Yeah. Matt mentioned.
Funeral to be sure.
Yeah, yeah. Matt mentioned to me, which is really a very good example. Most of you know Jeff Paul. If you don't, you know of Jeff, and I'm sure you know the story that is in the little yellow book. When Jeff came to my first seminar, he and Peggy and the kids were living in the sister's basement, and he was up to $100 and some odd thousand on his credit cards, and business wasn't working. And he was close, by the way, because I really didn't do that much. But I think we pieced him into the seminar, as I recall, on 5 different credit cards. So, I mean, I knew. They didn't go to any mealtime. They disappeared because not only, I mean, they didn't dare get stuck with a tab, let alone eat in a restaurant. I mean, they came with peanut butter and crackers and stuff in the suitcase and went up to the room and ate all during the seminar. And it was a super conference. I don't know. I think it was $2,000, $2,500, whatever it was. And I'm pretty sure we used, I'm sure he has said to me, we used the last little margin on every one of these credit cards. I mean, I got the last dollar there was to get. There was no more. And what Matt said is, wonder where he'd be today if you had felt any guilt about taking his money. And it's a very, very, very good point. And it's a double-sided coin. A, we never have the right. See, if somebody in a, if somebody in a mobile home with their kids not, wearing shoes with holes in them, chooses to put a satellite dish on the roof, and that's their priority. None of us, especially the satellite guy, but none of us have the right to tell them, unless we're supporting them. And that's a whole political issue. But otherwise, we don't have the right to tell them that that shouldn't be their priority. And if you want an extension of the Jeff Paul story, what happens if we don't let them have cable? And cable's where they see the Ron LeGrand infomercial that gets them to the free seminar where they find out how to buy real estate with no money down. And they never would have experienced that if they didn't have cable that they couldn't afford. Say, do we have the right to tell them they can't? And I don't have the right to tell Jeff, hey, you shouldn't really, maybe you shouldn't be spending your last dollar, None of my business, not my responsibility. My responsibility is to get his last dollar. That is my responsibility. Because my responsibility is to maximize profit for my shareholders. Period. Mm-hmm. It's his problem, it's his last dollar. It ain't my problem. Now the good news is, in his case, dollar well spent. But that was entirely up to him, not me. I didn't do anything. I talked with him for 10 minutes at the end of the seminar and said, hey, I think here's your 4 problems. Boom, 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 go fix them. But that doesn't mean he was going to go fix them. And I promise you, I wasn't going to the basement to find out. Mm-hmm. Here's another whole head trip stuff. We're on page 15. The other big reason people don't wind up with a ton of dough is because they're afraid of it. Having money will create all sorts of problems for me. By the way, on the next page, just for fun, I gave you this great article I found the other day about Kenya millionaires. Some kind of big accident, insurance settlement, and now there's all these impoverished people living in huts who suddenly got millions of dollars and all the problems they got and their marriages are falling apart. And so having money will create all sorts of problems. Having money will alienate me from my family and my friends. Big issue for a lot of people. They don't want to be the only one in the whole bunch. Having money will make me a target to be taken advantage of. Having money will change me into a bad person. Well, the first three are true. So if you want to be afraid of something, go ahead and be afraid of the first three, because they're absolutely real. Having money will create all sorts of problems for you, and initially you're probably not equipped to handle them. However, not having money has a whole bunch of problems too. Which set of problems would you rather have? You know, it's not that money makes problems go away. I assure you, Trump gets up every morning with a long list of them. You know, but which set would you rather have? I've had them both. I got a car right now, brand new car. Door won't close if you don't hit the lock button twice. Got a little electrical system defect. You know, the little doohickey that you set the seat so two different people can get in and out of the seat and it returns to the position. Never been able to make that work. Turned out wasn't necessary. Never been able to make that work. And you know, those things are a little annoying. But hey, I've had the car where there was no floorboards and you couldn't change a tire. I'd rather have these problems. Give me a choice, you know. I'll take these, you know. Having money will alienate me from family and friends. Will from some, especially if you say no to them. Here's a favorite side strategy. There's a guy here in Cleveland. He was on the radio. A friend of mine has a radio show here. He's on the radio. He hit the lottery. Not big, but millions. Before he goes down to cash the ticket, because now he's going to be on the news with the check and the right, here's what he does. He calls all his relatives and his friends, and he says, I got an emergency. I need to borrow $1,000, and I can't tell you what I need it for. Can you get over here tonight? And he checks them off. As you might imagine, he don't have a whole lot of people running over with $1,000. A whole lot of folks on the list have a reason, not a check. The next day, they all see him on TV having won the lottery. This dramatically reduces the number of incoming calls trying to tap the lottery winnings. Brilliant. I'm driving down the road, listening to this on the radio, I'm thinking, this guy, it's just incredible. He got it. Yeah. By the way, Louis Anderson's book, if you have family problems, Louis Anderson's book is worth reading. Because he's got his whole family, you know, who have been trying to tap him ever since he made $1. Having money will make me a target to be taken advantage of. Yep. The more you got, the more visible you are with it, more people will try and take it away from you. That's true. Well, yeah. The bad news is, the only way not to have to worry about that is not to have anything for them to take. That's the deal. Having money will change me into a bad person. People believe that. They fear that. But money and character are, you know, bad people are bad people. And you know the old deal, so far in the entire history of the convenience store industry, there has yet to be a robbery by somebody who pulled up in a limo. The getaway car hasn't been a stretch. One don't have much to do with the other. Making money too easily is wrong. Big deal for a lot of people. Goes back to the hard-earned dollars thing. You know, I got a pretty strong work ethic. I work hard. Got it from my father. But my father probably was also to the degree that he has a superior work ethic, he's probably ingrained with this. If you didn't get it by working hard, you don't deserve it, and the only way to get it is by working hard. Well, you believe that? Again, go take a look at all the hard-working people and see how much they got. You know, Ron's great slogan is, the less I do, the more I make. And man, there's a lot of truth to that in a lot of different ways. Rich people are unhappy. Having a lot of people will make me unhappy. Having a lot of money will make me unhappy.
Skip 5.
I know I skipped 5. I can count. I can count. Jump to page 18. People who attract money think and talk differently than people who don't. They have their own language. Their language with others is interesting. I'll point out 2 things to look for. One is, you guys are all belong, how many of you go to your trade association conventions or trade shows or those kind of functions? Okay, good. Here's how to know who to talk to. The only association I currently belong to, and for a number of years went every year to all the functions, is the National Speakers Association, a trade association of those of us who do this for some or all of our living, or pretend to. At the National Speakers Association, 90% of the hallway cocktail party conversation amongst speakers is about the art and style and drama of speaking. Translation, it's about the technical doing of the thing. Right? Not only do they talk about doing the thing, they deliver their shtick, their stage stuff now conversationally. You can't switch them out of it. If you go to a chiropractic convention, 90% of the hallway conversation isn't even conversation. They're busy adjusting each other. They're busy doing for free to each other what they're supposed to be doing for money in their office. And incidentally, they won't touch a patient in their office without x-rays first. But in the hallway at the Aladdin in Vegas during the Parker convention, nobody needs x-rays. They're up against a wall, they're on the floor, they're bent over a chair, everybody's whacking each other. And they're all talking to each other about their different technique. I do the Gonstead technique, I do the whoopee-whoopee technique, I use the activator, do you use the activator? When we used to put the chiropractors and the dentists in the same seminars, they came to the evening seminar, they didn't know, we mixed them. The chiropractors, of course, all thought we were selling only chiropractors until they get there. And you'd see them occasionally. There's sitting a couple of them in the room before we get started, and one guy's talking to the other one. I use the hoopy-hoopy technique, and the guy's going, I've been in the deal 30 years, never heard of the hoopy-hoopy technique. I was like, what? And one's a dentist and one's a chiropractor. You know, it takes them like 5 minutes to figure out they're working on different anatomical parts. 2 years in a row, I spoke at the National Guild of Hypnotists Convention. What are they all doing on the breaks? Woo-wooing each other. This one's got the deal, this one uses the, you know, they're all out there hypnotizing each other. You don't want to talk to any of these people. Mm-hmm. There's maybe a few here, a few there. What are they talking about? How to get money. That's what they're talking about. They're the ones you want to talk to because they're the ones who got the money. The ones who are talking about the doing of whatever their thing is, I promise you can predict their bank balances. Because they're all focused on the wrong thing. They even think they're in the wrong business. They don't know they're in the money business. They think they're in the whacking, cracking, speaking, woo-wooing businesses. Right? They don't even get that. And so their conversation is all about what's real comfortable to them and all about, the doing of their thing, which, is a tiny little piece of the puzzle. If you don't know that by now, in whatever business you're in, the actual doing of the thing is such a tiny little piece of the puzzle. I mean, it's all about how do you get money, how do you get a customer, how do you keep a customer, how do you build the value of a customer, it's all that. And so you don't want to be in conversation with any of these people. You want to find the few. Now, there's times to have conceptual conversations and philosophical conversations and all that, preferably with people who you've already identified in your mastermind group or you've already identified are a whole lot more successful than you are and so forth. But for the most part, you want to be around the people who are talking about the money, especially if you want to increase your amount of money. The second thing about language with other people, here's a tip. Here's a clue. I saw on A&E or, I don't know, one of them channels about a week ago, they were running a biography of Dave Thomas from Wendy's. And most people have the view of Dave from the commercials, of the happy, jolly, kind of doofusy guy. Dave, pretty ruthless business guy his entire career. And when he was still a Kentucky Fried Chicken franchisee and took over failing franchises in Columbus, he quickly put 2 other chicken places out of business. And both times they had a huge celebration. I mean, he wanted to put them out of business. He was glad he put them out of business. He was thrilled he put them out of business, and they celebrated putting them out of business. But what all of it, they interviewed a whole bunch of the executives and so forth. And I think this show was done before he passed, by the way, my thinking on this. And the commonality in all the people who worked for him, they said that you couldn't be in conversation with Dave anywhere, anytime, about anything for longer than 5 minutes without him asking, what are you doing to increase sales? What are you doing to increase sales? What are we doing to increase sales? That was always his question. Every day when I call my office, I think he's got a long list of stuff she wants to tell me. My question is, are we making any money? Money coming in over the fax machine? Yeah, we're making money. We're always making money. I said, we're always making money because I'm always asking, are we making any money? That's why we're making money. If I wasn't asking, we'd stop making money. We'd be in some other business. We'd be in the paperwork business. That's the business we'd be in a hot second. I don't want to be in the paperwork business. I want to be in the money business. But if I stopped asking, a whole lot of people think they're in some other kind of business than the money business. Everybody I know who brings in a ton of dough is always asking about it. Tracy's father, who was really the first person I was in, who really fatally flawed individual, but right about 95%. It's the 5% that kills you, but right about 95% of the time. You couldn't come back from running an errand and not be asked, did you get a check? Meaning, did you sell something while you were out? Because otherwise, why leave? I mean, did you get money? Dead of night. Didn't matter. Christmas Eve. Did you get a check today? And everybody tired of being asked. But good question. So they're focused on the money. That's the clue, if you want to know. They're focused on it. They're paying attention to it all the time. And it shows up even in conversational language, the first things out of their mouth. The self-talk's kind of a bigger issue. Vance said something yesterday. Maybe I got it from him. I don't know originally, but is this deal. What did you hear at the top of the stairs? Some of you in the room are too young, but most of us, we have this shared experience. I mean, the actual experience, not conceptual. We have this actual experience. They put you to bed. You snuck back out. And at the top of the stairs, you listened to the adults down below. How many have the actual experience? Yeah. Yeah. Well, what you heard has enormous impact on what's going on with you today. And as Mike said yesterday, it's worth trying to identify what that was that you heard, because it's playing a lot. And what most people heard, the statistics virtually guarantee it, what most people heard about money wasn't real good, wasn't real helpful. So stop to think about it. Is what you heard when you were at the top of the stairs, did you hear a lot of abundance conversation, or did you hear a lot of scarcity conversation? These tracks now come out in what you say. You know the common stuff, there's a list of them on the next page, right? There's stuff people say about themselves. There's a license plate that says, off to work I go to pay the bills I owe. A, it's a crappy reason to go to work. It's really why she can't get there on time. Because she's going for the wrong reason. But it's also, what's it focused on? The bills I owe. Where do most people keep their bills? Where do most people keep their bills? Kitchen table. He said desk. Let's do it another way. Where'd your parents keep their bills? Bedroom dresser. Where'd your parents keep their bills?
Sink.
Kitchen sink, next to the sink. Really, a file cabinet, an advanced set of parents.
Above the bar.
Huh?
Above the bar.
Above the bar. On top of his desk. Okay, where? By the phone. How many of you total they had them in the kitchen? Yeah, a pretty good little clump. Sure. Okay. A lot of them in the top kitchen drawer. A little doohickey. Okay. Kitchen, most used room in the house, where everybody gathers. Okay. There's the bills. Constantly visible, dealt with bills. Where do you keep yours? File folder, drawer. Yeah, get them things out of sight. They should be tickler filed. As soon as they come in, dumped, pay them when you want, when they're due, but you don't want to be shuffling through them all the time. That's the other thing your parents did. They didn't have a tickler file. Not only were they always visible, but in order to figure out which ones they were going to pay today or this week, they shuffled through all of them. In a given month, they shuffled through a stack a lot. And you watched them shuffle through the bills. The thing you saw the most of was bills. My top kitchen drawer, I got full of cash. I do. When I open that sucker, I want to see money. That's what I want to see. I just throw it in there. And when I need more, I go to where I got some, and I get a big handful of it, and I put it in the drawer. And then I just keep taking it out of the drawer until it needs more, and I put more in the drawer. Every time I open the drawer, there's money. Other stuff that's in there, the only other thing in that drawer is the spoons, because I use the spoons most. So to get the drawer open to get a spoon, I see the money. All right? The bills, I put away. I want to see bills. All right? So what did you hear? What did they talk about when you overheard their conversations? How many can remember your parents and friends having conversations about, any of you who live in the East, price of snow tires, price of groceries, price of gas? Right? How many of you can tell me now what the price of a gallon of gas tank is? Anybody know what a gallon of gas costs? Huh? Be better if you didn't know, those of you who raised your hands. person who knows the price of small things is focused on small things. It doesn't matter what a gallon of gas costs. You're going to buy it anyway. Now, a poor person might make a different choice. You aren't going to make that choice. You aren't going to go to the gas station and say, oh my God, it's X today. I'm not going to buy any. You're not going to do that. If you need gas, you're going and get gas. So what difference does it make what it costs? Since it makes no difference, why clutter your mind knowing? It's irrelevant. I hear people talking about the price of lettuce. Do you know what a head of lettuce costs? Good. They know. They know what a head of lettuce costs. It's incredible to me.
2 stores.
Huh? Oh yeah, at 2 different stores. You know? Does it make, should it make, no. If you want lettuce, aren't you going to go get lettuce? Then why know what it costs? People who know the price of small things are focused on small things. Everything, here's a big principle. Everything is programming. And anything repetitively stuck in there will accumulate and begin to govern everything else you do. So if you have enough conversation about the price of lettuce at 2 different stores, see, that's programming. And it's poverty programming. There's only 2 kinds of consciousness, prosperity or poverty. There's really nothing in between. And so everything's programming. Every conversation you have, every TV show you watch repetitively, whatever it is you read repetitively, it's all programming. You can watch Springer every once in a while for entertainment. I do too. But the person who watches it every day, if they're not already a candidate to be on the show, they soon will be, because it will create what they're watching. Your next slide is about acceleration. Tell you a story. Isn't that your next slide? Page 23. This explains to you, this will also explain to you why I have a drawer full of money.